kind of quite capture people's attention when we talk about violence against children, and that is online violence. A lot of this kind of violence that we talked about, a lot of people think about this as, happening to somebody physically, happening to someone in person. And yes, it does. But I mean, for the last decade or so, or even before that, um, online violence has become a major force and a major threat to children's safety, but it's not regarded in the same way or given the same importance sometimes as offline violence, such as these times. I just want to spend a couple of minutes on what this really is. Online abuse is any form of abuse which happens via the internet. Anyone can suffer online abuse or harassment. However, its intensity and nature can differ based on a few things, such as the context in which you live, your sex, age, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, your disability status, or any other social character of the victim. And online violence can take place on any online platform or device that has a connection to the internet, be computers, through tablets, mobile phones. And it's interesting to note how it manifests as well. So how does it happen? It happens through things like grooming. That means somebody trying to prepare a child for an abusive situation, such as developing a relationship with a child, gaining the trust of a child, building the confidence of that child, and then kind of preparing that child for an abusive situation, either online or it could be offline where they meet up. And things like cyberbullying, I think that's better known. Sexting, sexual abuse and exploitation. Trolling, I don't know whether that is known so well. So trolling refers to sending messages that create conflict, like extremist and racist messages, and other types of messages that can create conflict among people and children, and threatening and fake profiles. So there are so many ways that online violence manifests. But what is it like? I mean, what is the magnitude of this problem? So we in Sri Lanka, Save the Children in Sri Lanka and World Vision Lanka, we did a research recently, concluded this year, about the incidence of online violence. We found that 3 out of 10 children who participated in this study had experienced some sort of online violence. And that's a lot. And also we know statistics don't always, give the correct picture. It is usually higher than what we find from, from quantitative research. So this was a startling figure for us. But if you look globally, I mean, it really reflects a global picture, because globally, 1 in 3 internet users worldwide are children. And the danger of that is, there's nothing you can do about children being online. Children have to be online. This is digital age. Everything is online. So, it's not really a way to say don't go online. It's how, allowing children to understand and develop their capacity, how to protect themselves. Because 750,000 individuals, according to End Violence Against Children, at any point in time are estimated to be looking to connect with children for sexual purposes. So child sexual abuse is usually captured through images and videos, which we call child sexual abuse material. And there are currently more than 46 million of these images and videos in Europol's repository alone. Detecting and reporting child sexual abuse material is the only way to really, really stop this from being shared. Because the problem with online violence, and especially with child sexual abuse material, is once it's out on the internet, it's out. It's being shared across, and it's very hard to eventually take it down. And it will be there for years, and it's there forever. Basically, I mean, there are organizations which work to take down a lot of this content, but it is never that we can't ensure that it is it is completely out of the internet. And also, the danger is that it's usually the younger children who are victims of online violence. According to this data, children under the age of 13, 92% of them were victims. Right. So this is global picture, and this is the general incidence of violence against children in the world. So, then what did the pandemic have to do with it, basically? Did it do anything, or did it exacerbate any of these risks? Something we will look at through, I want to analyze this impact of COVID-19 on children's safety and protection through the social ecological model. I think some of you may be aware of this. This is the model is really looking at a phenomenon across and the impact of different environments of the child on that phenomenon, basically. So we look at the child, the impact on the child, and then we look at what has changed in the family environment that contributes to increased violence against children, what's the impact of the community and society, and how it kind of relates and contributes to this increase of violence against children during the pandemic. Right. Apologies for this slide. It is I understand you might not see it so well, but I will talk you through it. So again, these are the four layers: the child, the family, the community, and society that we look at. When we look at the child, we see that, as we know, a lot of children start to use the internet, maybe for the first time in their lives, when online schooling started. And children who were exposed to the internet before were probably start to engage a lot more through online devices. However, we saw that there was a poor understanding about protection risk online as well as offline. And that there was an increase in online bullying and exploitation. Now, this is not to say that it didn't happen before, but we started to see it more because children were online more often. And also we realized that the perpetrators are also at home without anything much to do, because in a lockdown situation, everybody's at home. So the perpetration also increased to some extent. And we also saw that there was an increase in child labor and trafficking, and that this is mainly linked to the household economy, which we will touch upon later as well. There was an increase in gender-based violence because the men started to, the men start to be at home more often than not because of the lockdown. And this resulted in a lot more violence against women and children within the domestic sphere. And because some children could not access online platforms for learning, there was a possible increase. I mean, the data isn't very clear across the globe, but there are indications that there was an increase in school dropouts. And so throughout this, we see that a lot of children have been victimized a lot more. However, there was limited awareness among victims, or we call survivors of violence, about support services that they can access, because support services were also struggling with the lockdown situation. They had not operated remotely before. So it was a real struggle for people to actually access support. If you look at the family, the changes that happened in the family that contributed to increased violence against children, there were disruption of informal networks of support from extended family members, friends, and neighbors. I mean, we all have experienced it. Child labor and sexual exploitation was used to supplement household income, as I mentioned. People lost their jobs, etc. And again, another thing that I think a lot of us would have experienced in the last 2 years, increased stress and anxiety as caregivers. because we were required to take multiple roles: as parent, as teacher, as educator, as carer. Yes, so nurse, doctor, everything pretty much. And changes in caring responsibilities due to economic changes and shifts in power dynamics within households. So we saw that, parents had to make some tough decisions. Some parents migrated for work, etc. So then the caring of, children were left behind. Children's care changed, and because of that, like some children actually, their experiences of care. They had to be, they had to start living with people in their extended family who may not have the best interests of the child in mind, and so inadequate care was seen as a risk at this point. And then there was increased acceptability or justification for violence against children, because I think that kind of stemmed from the stress that everybody was going through. And, a lot of times we got this answer, a kind of response from parents say, well, there's nothing else we can do. They're not behaving. That kind of triggered a lot of domestic violence. And we also saw an increase in alcohol and substance use within households. Within the community, one of the things that we saw was changes to the residential care facilities of children. Now, we know that a child goes to residential care if there's no option for home-based care, if there are no parents or any other person who's able to look after the child. But residential care facilities started to close. The children were sent back to their homes, or whatever that really meant, which meant that their care was seriously compromised. The loss of community level or public safety nets and services, especially for children who are experiencing violence at home. So things that they used to access before, maybe safe spaces or child-friendly spaces before, community centers, all that started to shut down. And also increasing the influence of social norms that condone violence, not just within the family, but as communities, we kind of saw that violence was not really prevented. It was happening. And the use of police to enforce restrictions on some countries, we saw that the lockdown resulted in protests, and there was police which was brought on to curb this issue. And finally, as a society, so we saw the disruptions in access to child protection services. Really, unfortunately, a lot of the response services stopped because they just did not know how to operate remotely. Now I think most of the services they understand how to do it, but especially during the first 6 months or 7 months of the pandemic, it was really hard for these services to function. And because schools closed and the education system sort of stopped working, there was reduced identification of cases of child abuse and maltreatment coming from the schools and teachers. That was one of the main ways that we identified violence against children. And also coupled with that, there was reduced access to violence prevention and health services, which would take the form of perhaps community-based interventions. Or interventions, especially from the health sector. So these are the impacts at different levels of the environment around the child that made a real impact on their safety. The impact of COVID-19 that impacted on the safety of children. I think Rushika will take it from here, and she will talk through about. I guess this is kind of like what I presented was a problem, really. And I think Rushika will talk about how, as educators, we can actually respond to this problem. Thank you, everyone. Rushika, over to you.
Thanks, Buddhini, especially for giving that kind of a good overview of the increase of violence abuse, especially during this pandemic. And thanks once again, I think, to e-educators, to Lorraine and Manjula for this invitation, and for all the educators who have given their valuable time to join us this evening in this very important discussion. So I think our question that we have is really, as educators, what can we do and what is our role in this whole to mitigate and stop? So I've kind of asked, because we've got participants from all over the world with different experiences and maybe different thoughts. I've really asked Manjula's support to run a poll. Manjula, I was wondering whether it's possible to...
Yeah, Rushika, I will run the poll now. Yeah.
Great. Just to get an idea so that we know which important points you would be most interested in during this presentation. So you will see a small poll. That's a little few questions.
You have it now?
Yes,
Do you have it?
I think I'm hoping everyone can see the small poll. So as a teacher, as an educator in the capacity of influencing children, some of your thoughts. So just be interesting to see. So if you can just take a few minutes to answer the poll, if that's okay. Manjul, I think you might be able to see how many have responded.
Oh, yeah. Let me check. Yeah. Okay.
Can possibly close the poll. I think there's about...
Oh, we have many responses. Yeah.
Great.
What if I...
yeah, do you want to just say
it's going up. It's going up. Responses are going up. Okay. At the end, I will
present the poll.
And yeah.
Okay. So I think we have about 15 of us participating. If you have about that around, just you can stop the poll and maybe present it.
Okay.
In the interest of time as well. Okay, maybe we can just see what participants had to say about, their role in this and how they've taken care of their own well-being, and we can just maybe,
Okay, I will say the question, then I will, tell you the percentage. Is that okay?
Okay. Sure.
Okay. First one, as a teacher, how influential do you think you are to stop or mitigate violence and abuse against children? I think still participant response to the poll. What if we give it one more minute?
Okay, a few more seconds maybe.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Just encourage you all. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer. I think it's just so that we can get thinking, really think about, what your perceptions are around this. And also it all depends on the context we come from. So,
okay, so the first one, as a teacher, how influential do you think you are to stop or mitigate violence and abuse against children? None, 0%, a little, 0%, somewhat, 33%, very much, 67%.
Okay, great.
And the second one, and would you say you have taken any additional measures to address your own well-being during the pandemic? No, 0%, somewhat, 22%, yes, 78%. Third one, would you say you have supported peers, other teachers to address well-being challenges? No, 0%, somewhat, 30%, yes, 70%. Fourth question, are you aware of the referral mechanism available in your context? I.e., if you do come across situation where a child requires additional support or protection, you can link them with the necessary experts. No, 0%, somewhat, 40%, yes, 60%. Fifth one, the last one. Have you connected any child in your classroom or school who require additional protection support with relevant authorities? Yes, 60%, no, 40%.
Okay, thanks, Manjul. And I think, I think we will get an idea. Maybe we can go to the next slide, Buddhini.
Okay.
So I will call us as educators as what I would term them as first responders. And what I really mean by that is really, as we interact with children regularly, even though it may not be face-to-face as schools are closed, we will be most likely the closest to see some changes, whether it may be physical harm or change in behavior, change in the way they're responding, the way they're, interacting and engaging with us in the class, which kind of be the first signs if children are, experiencing any type of abuse or violence. Next slide, please. The next slide was really to think about, and maybe you can put it in the chat if you like to unmute, about our role as educators. What do you think our role is as educators? I'm sure this is an answer that you all know, are very familiar with, but just be good to get interacting a little bit. Buddhini, next slide, please. So if you want to just maybe put in the chat, what do you think our role is as educators? I haven't seen anyone responding as yet. You as an educator, I think, we play a very vital role in the child of, in the lives of children. So we just shouldn't underestimate it. Yeah, we have to be real role models. What else would you say? So they look up to us. We have to be good role models. Any other answers? Maybe next slide, Buddhini. So yes, to understand them. So we are those who are closely working to understand them. So in terms of roles of educators, Buddhini, maybe you can just slip through. Yes, I've just used some words that sort of, would inspire or reflect on, the purpose that, you are in this space, to sort of facilitate, nurture, encourage, guide, build, inculcate, foster, example. But at the end of the day, we're here that in our learning spaces, whether it's a school or any other informal learning space, that we are able to, that children are able to participate, and there's an inclusive environment that is safe, and there's quality learning happening. Buddhini, next slide. So I think the pandemic has really, affected children. There's a lot of, we talk a lot about learning loss, but I think, it's beyond the learning loss itself. Children have been affected in many, many ways due to the pandemic. And I think really we as educators have a very good opportunity to think about a more integrated or a holistic approach as we, help children in this nurturing, facilitating, inculcating in those roles that we talked about for children in these learning spaces. So one of the things we wanted to sort of ask us to reflect is in your school, in your learning space, in the way where you're influencing, do you, it will be good to set up, I think more than ever before, some kind of a protocol or a mechanism where teachers, those, dealing with children or coming across these situations are able to either get guidance or also may be able to, escalate issues that they're having, because there should be a systematic protocol in place in how teachers, or an agreed protocol where teachers, how they are going to deal with these situations. And there needs some level of training. So I think more than ever before, it has become important for us as educators at different levels to become trained on, what we also call, as we are known as, psychological first aid. And also, I think many respondents saying we are aware, because there, we may have limitations in the support that we can provide. So what kind of other services, as Buddhini mentioned, many weren't up and running, last year, but lots have adapted. But what kind of referral mechanisms are existing in our context that we can connect children with in the event that they are facing abuse or violence that is maybe, goes beyond the support that we can provide them. Next slide, please, Buddhini. So I just put down, this is really from the PFA, the Psychological First Aid Guideline developed by WHO, and it's on the internet as well. So just kind of put down some do's and don'ts, especially as educators. I think we need to be approachable. We need to have, earned some level of trust from children, from them to be able to confide in us. We may be able to detect that there is something not right, that this child is, facing something that's, that they are being abused or experiencing some kind of violence, but for them to really be able to share with you, I think there is, we need to maintain that confidentiality. So we need to think about, even though we may be in a particular, especially I think in our context, that children also come from different traditions or ideas or, contexts or religious beliefs. So how do we respect some of those things? And, really remember that every child, has that right to learn, because when they are, being abused or facing some kind of violence, we know children are not able to really be in that classroom and gain their learning outcomes as appropriately. So some of the don'ts is, we need to not make promises. We can get emotionally involved. So that's why I think it's good for people, teachers especially, to go through some sort of training, know our limitations, and not be too pushy as intrusive, that they should confide in us, especially if we are not trained counselors. It is important to know those referral mechanisms that we can direct children to. And also, I think even in the best interest to share, especially with another teacher. And I think that's why the protocol and the mechanism becomes very important about how and, who you should share what you know or what a child may have confided in you in, because I think that really can, be a big icebreaker in terms of, if you violated somebody's confidence, we know children, in the future will not share anything with us. Next slide. So one of the things we felt was, I think, really not addressed in many contexts. And I know a lot of you all answered that you have done some things differently, been intentional about your own well-being. And we felt that this is a really big priority in many contexts, maybe not in school-wise, but I think as a generic, ministries of education or systems haven't really emphasized the need for teacher well-being, for your own well-being. And I think teaching, we know, is a stressful job, and I think not just in the COVID, but in general. And I think and this pandemic has affected us all, right? In the way, when we have our own children, how we, balance that with our own, professional priorities. So it's really important to have that kind of support, because if we are not having the right posture, we are not ready to be, alert, we have not, fully taken care of our own needs, then it's difficult for us to really be able to identify or really be able to be, pick up the cues that children might be displaying or showcasing if they are facing some sort of abuse or violence at home or otherwise. So we wanted to place some emphasis here today to think about as a takeaway. In the short time, we cannot go through much details, but on the importance of your own well-being as a teacher. So last slide I think I have is just some resources that you as educators, as teachers and other educators can refer to if you want more information. And a lot of this information is from our Safe Back to School, the Global Education Cluster Guidelines from INEE, and Child Protection Minimum Standards, the Sphere Handbook, etc., that talks about in these kind of crisis contexts how we can respond and what are the priorities. So that is the end of really my last slide I asked is, as we as educators is saying, as we've joined this, as we, maybe answer questions and share some experiences, what would we do differently? What would be our key takeaway so that we really are part of the solution in ending violence and abuse against children. So thank you very much. And I think over to you, Manjula, maybe?
Okay. Okay. Could you stop sharing the screen for now? Okay. Well, the speaker view. Okay, this is the time to ask questions. So if you have any question and if you want to contribute your idea, and this is the time. Just raise your hand and I will unmute you. And yeah. Robbie from Nigeria. He's a storyteller and an author. So yeah, let me turn on the video. Okay.
Okay. Hello, everybody.
Thank you.
Can you? Okay, so thank you, Manjula, for putting this up. Thank you so much, Lorraine. Thank you, Rushika, and your Withana for this amazing presentation. So I just want to add something. One of the ways we can help children, one of the ways we can help improve children are, through storytelling. Okay, so right here in Nigeria, I'm a storyteller, yeah, and I write stories basically for children. And sometime during the pandemic, we saw that, kids were not going to school. And even after the lockdown was released and people could move about a little, parents were still afraid of sending children to school. So in my area where I lived, here's what I did. I decided to organize a free storytelling, story writing session for the kids. The pictures are on my page on Facebook. I could share with Manjula later. And these kids came over to my place. Yeah, of course, we observed COVID-19 rules, wash your hands. Then I got to teach them how to wash their hands, spacing and all that. So these kids got to learn storytelling. And while these kids were at my place learning how to write and tell stories for themselves, I noticed some things in them. Then I began to see that some of them were actually neglected by parents. And, some things I noticed, I said, okay, take me to your house. I need to speak to your mom. I need to speak to your dad, And, I did this. And after this program, I noticed that, most of these kids improved in the way they dressed, in the way they related with others. Those of them who seemed to, have violent tendencies, I noticed that they were getting better because I kept on going back to check on them. So you see, storytelling is like an avenue you can, reach out to kids and make them actually see what they are. And the amazing thing is these kids actually wrote their stories. And what I did was compile the stories into PDFs and gave to the parents and links them with publishers. So you see, these kids not only learned storytelling, they now realized that they had this in themselves. They could write their stories. And, because I linked the families to publishers, they could actually make some money from their books being published. So that's one of the ways we can help kids around the world, storytelling and all that. That's my contribution.
Okay.
Thanks, Kin, for sharing that. Yeah. Sorry, Manjula.
Deja, please. Okay, Daddy, it is your time. Yeah, ask you.
Hi, good day to everyone. I have a few questions. Like, many of the teachers are not experts in terms of handling young people or children who are abused. I'd like to know from the practices, like, what should the teacher do if he or she is not an expert? Should the teacher consult with the guidance counselor or the principal or a colleague who has a background of handling children with or children who are abused? I'd like to ask that to one or to the team. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry, for that question. And I think that's why we said it's kind of, I think, going back to saying it's really important for the school or the community of educators to agree on what will be the mechanism. So if it is the guidance teacher who is trained, then if it's that he or she is the focal, then it should be that person, may not necessarily be the principal. We don't really encourage, teachers to share among themselves, even if other teachers may also have experience or expertise in that area. So it should follow that protocol, mostly to ensure confidentiality, etc. And if it's beyond that particular focal, then our advice is really to make external references beyond the school community. But I don't know if Buddhini, you want to add anything to that?
I would like to. Sorry.
Sorry, no. I didn't have anything to add, Rushika, really. I think trying to get through to the services that can respond is the best way as fast as possible.
I would like to reply to my friend Dari Dakanai. Hello, because was exactly what was in my mind before. First of all, I believe we have to teach our students to get the way how to ask for help. And not only our students, but also the teachers in school. They must know to whom they have to address, to whom they have to ask for help. For example, we may put in front of them some of phone numbers or psychologist in the school or counselor, something like this. So your questions was related to what was on my mind. So yes, I believe we have to teach them, first of all, to know how to ask for help. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Corinne. I think that's very, very important. As teachers, we sometimes feel that we need to know everything, so we don't reach out. But I think it's really important to have that kind of, a network where we know where we can ask for that help.
And also, Sudeja, she's a wonderful educator from Romania. Thank you very much for joining, Sudeja.
Thank you. Thank you too.
And any more questions?
Another thing which I would like to share, to say, it's that we don't have to wait for others to take action. This must start from us. If us as teachers notice something in our students, because it's our role to notice them and help them, we must announce their family, maybe, or I don't know, the headmaster of the school or the counselor, psychologist in the school. We must take action and don't wait for others to say us, you see, I notice these students, it's somehow not okay. I notice, you notice, so let's do something. No, and don't wait for others.
Great.
I'd like to add on. Also, I guess we really have to educate the parents. No? We continuously
Yes,
need
very
to educate
true.
the parents in our school, for them to be able to understand, the situation is really difficult for our children, for the young ones.
It's difficult for us what to say. It's difficult even for us.
I think just to add to that, it's really that education to the parents should really emphasize the need to take your child seriously. Because in a lot of cases, what we see is that the children don't talk because they don't think they'll be taken seriously or they'll be blamed for that. And they themselves, I mean, like when you're abused, you feel that you're to blame. I mean, you have that blame, feeling of blame within you. So it's kind of exacerbated, by the reaction of parents. So it's really important. I mean, I myself have done educating sessions for children and parents, and it's amazing, like how it changes not just the ability of children to understand what's also happening, but how it changes the way the teachers and parents look at this problem, because suddenly the problem is visible. That's the other thing. Like, when children know that this is wrong, more children report, more children come and tell. So I've seen that, like, people think, oh, it's just incidence of violence has grown. I said, no, it's just children know that something wrong is happening and they're being vocal about it. So it's really important that we don't kind of disregard that as well. We just say, oh, like we can't say that so much of violence is happening in the school or all that. It's we really need to understand what the priority is. And that's why, like, things like the best interest of the child, as always believing and always advocating for the best interest of the child is really important.
Excellent. Are there any other questions before we close today? It's been such an informative meeting from everyone. It's interesting to hear comments from across the globe. I want to thank, oh, go ahead, Rana, Itar.
Thank you, everybody. This is the first time I'm going to speak to an international community, teachers, expert teachers, especially Corina Shreda. I'm very glad to her, and I'm very much obliged to Lauren Leo Vanjala Jayan. I'm the head teacher of a secondary school. This is only 5 or 6 months I have experienced as the head teacher of a secondary school. I have to face many problems in my country. The students of my school are indifferent to the study. They always they are addicted to Facebook or social media. I have to face many problems. I have visited door to door, and I have so far as known that the students are not serious to their studies, though parents try to make themselves understand the importance of study, but they are always indifferent to study. They don't want to go to school. They are addicted to social media, and you can see my young children, my young only son always tries to use Android phone. Same condition the students of our school, and I think everywhere in the country. What should we do for the children or students to reduce abuse or violence in every sector, homes or schools or social environment? Please suggest me so that I can apply for the students as a head teacher of my school. Thank you, everybody.
Amazing.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we should end this session. Lauren, what is your idea?
Sure, we can
Buddhini
end
and
the session.
Rushika?
If
We
you want
have-
to,
Yeah.
if you want to turn your webcams on, we can look at our international audience so that we can take a photograph of everyone from around
Yes.
everywhere. We've got so many countries represented. I'm not sure if Miguel is there and done. That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Buddhini and Rushika, for coming in and speaking with all of us today. Really appreciate all of your time and expertise in this very sensitive topic that we've discussed today. I know I'm speaking for everyone in the appreciation that we have for you and the work that Save the Children does on behalf of everyone across the world. So we're grateful for that.
Yeah. Also, I need to contribute my idea as well. And I need to thank Lauren Leo. She's the power behind everything. And yeah, last time we have organized 3 sessions for the World Ocean Day. And by the time there was so many stories going on in Sri Lanka related to child abuse, then I talked to Lauren Leo. We need to do something, and we need to find the best organization to the conduct a session like that. And yeah, finally Lorraine contacted Save the Children, one of the biggest organization in the world. So yeah, and thank you Lorraine Leo, and thank you Buddhini, Withana and Rushika Dias, and thank you very much for your all the educators from all around the globe. And yeah, we have participants from many different countries. And yeah, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was nice.
Yeah. Sorry, Nicholas.